Hi everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Thank you for everyone that's commented and subscribed to my channel, The Worm Whisperer. I enjoy making these learning videos to help you become a better worm farmer. I want to let everyone know that I now have an Instagram account where I post pictures of my worm farm so everyone can see how I run my worm farm and maybe get a few tips off there and see some cool pictures of some of my worms in my worm farm. So if anybody's interested, I'll put a link in the bottom there that you can subscribe to my Instagram channel and get those updates. So today we're going to go over how to maximize your worm population. So to start off today's learning video, I am going to go over how many worms to start your bin with and why. Then I'm going to review some simple, easy things you can do to make sure that you have the max amount of worms in your bin. After that, I will be reviewing what you can do to grow a very large population of worms depending on what you use them for. Most people worm farming are using them for compost or fishing worms, so you want to make sure you have the maximum amount of worms as you can have in your bin at any one time. Getting started, I think it's important to do a quick overview of how worms reproduce. So worms are hermaphrodites. That means that they're both male and female and can fertilize their own cocoons. However, they do need two worms to reproduce despite being hermaphrodites. The breeding cycle is approximately 27 days from mating to laying cocoons. Normally it takes 2 to 3 weeks for them to hatch from their cocoons. When the worms hatch from their cocoons, there is normally 3 baby worms per cocoon. Once the new worms hatch, they will be able to reproduce in 2 to 3 months' time. At this point in their lives, they will continue to have cocoons till they die. While we don't know the upper limits of how long a worm can live, in our worm bins, we think that it's roughly between 2 to 4 years. Next is the amount of worms you're going to need to start your new worm bin. For beginners, I normally recommend starting 1 pound of worms for every 4 square feet of your worm bin's top surface area. For experienced vermicomposters can start with more worms, and normally I recommend 1 pound of worms for every square foot of your worm composter's surface top area. If you go online and do a Google search for worm density calculator, you will find some really good calculators to give you a pretty good idea of the amount of worms you're going to need to get started with your new bin. Keep in mind the more worms that you start with, the faster your bin will start producing worm castings. If you do start with more worms when starting out, if things do end up going bad and you lose your new worms, you're going to have to pay to replace them and start again. So normally I would recommend starting with the minimum amount of worms, so if you do run into issues and are unable to get things back on track, you will have lost less money and less worms. Once you become a more experienced worm farmer, then you can up the amount of worms in your starting bin. Now that you have your bin and your worms, you want to ramp up the worm population as fast as possible to get the most out of your bin. The very first key to maximizing your worms is running a healthy worm bin. The healthier the worm bin, the better your worms can reproduce in your bin. I'm not going to get in too much to running a healthy worm bin. I have some other videos on that subject on my channel if you want to go and check them out. So after a month or so of running your worm bin, you're going to notice all kinds of little yellowish brown cocoons while looking through your bin. This is a really good thing, and this means that your worms are happy enough to start producing cocoons and your worm population will start to increase. Depending on how fast you want to increase your total population and how much work you want to do to separate them, you can pick them out of your harvested worm castings, then add them to your new filled bin. This will increase the population even faster than not harvesting them. A great way to tell when your worm bin is getting or at max population is when you start to see very few of these in your harvested worm castings. If the worms are in distress or your bin is still growing, they will lay more cocoons to offset this issue. Okay, so eventually your worms are going to be at max population. Worms will self-regulate once they are limited by 2 things: food and space. You can always feed the worms more if they are not at max population, but there is only one thing you can do if they are out of space. That's add more space for your worms to keep them increasing in their numbers. To do this, you can start a whole new bin using the methods above. Add another tier to the bin. They are going to need more room to grow. At this point, you are now at the maximum population for your bin. You can keep adding new space as long as you want. The worms will keep producing as long as they have an ample amount of food to sustain them. So this will wrap up our video for today on learning how to maximize your worm population. I really hope this video was educational and will help you if you're looking to ramp up your worm population as quick as possible. If it was, I hope you'll drop me a like and maybe subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. I hope that you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.